This week on Merchants of Change, we've got Bill Kavanaugh. Bill played football at Bentley University and then spent the next 16 years in the trenches as a coach. Today, he's an account executive at Blue Mantis after spending a couple years at Barracuda. Here he is, Bill Kavanaugh. I'm J.R. Butler, co-founder and CEO of the Shift Group, and you're listening to Merchants of Change. This is a podcast about transferring the skills and behaviors we acquire as athletes and military veterans into becoming a professional salesperson. Each week, we'll introduce you to a top performer who will help us understand how they became professional merchants of change. What's up, kid? Today on the show, we've got Bill Kavanaugh, or as I like to call him, Coach Cav. Bill, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yep. And for context, for any new listeners, Merchants of Change is a show for new salespeople and people who are considering a career shift into sales. And our mission at Shift Group is to help elite athletes and military veterans become elite sales professionals. And all of our guests are former athletes or veterans who've gone on to find success in sales. And we always like to start at the beginning, right? Start with the sports and your coaching career. So really broad question to start. I'm going to ask you, like, if I were to say, hey, give me some of your favorite memories of playing football, where does your mind drift off to?
Yeah, well, I got to Bentley University as a student athlete in the year 2000. Came into a program with unbelievable successes, over the 90s. My freshman year, we were a 5-6 football program, which wasn't really what Bentley was used to. The next 3 years, our group of guys was able to take that thing my sophomore year to a 9-2 record, my junior year to a 10-1 record, and my senior year to an 11-0 record in the first NCAA appearance for football, Bentley University in school's history in Division II playoffs. So, that's what I think of. Great group of guys. Just an awesome group to be a part of and obviously have a bunch of success.
Yeah, and I know we got connected through your kind of Bentley network, and I was on a great college team like that as well. And I always find it interesting that those types of teams create really lifelong friendships. It's really special experience to be part of something like that. What about when I ask you about coaching? What are some of your favorite memories from coaching?
I kind of break that into probably my stops, right? I started coaching for my father. So that was at UMass Dartmouth right out of school. There was so much, so much enjoyment in working with my dad, who I'd watched do that for, 20 years prior. And then I went to Stonehill College for a quick stop with a great friend, Rob Talley. We took a team there in 1 year that I think they had won an average of 1 or 2 games a year. For the previous 10, we won 5. So that was great. Then I went out to Penn State and really had an unbelievable experience there through highs and lows. Really, you see the B-52 flyover in the Rose Bowl my first year at Penn State. When you think about trying to take your career to the highest level, and there's nothing better than being in the Rose Bowl in front of 100,000 people on New Year's Day. So, and then lastly, I spent 8 years at my alma mater back at Bentley University, and we built that program. And again, it's a program with great success, but early on we were a 500 football team. The last 2 playing seasons, we won a conference championship and made our first NCAA Division II playoff appearance in 17 years. that was my last season as the head coach. So that's what I'd quickly go to, my main thoughts, but it kind of breaks down by stop.
Unbelievable. Like said, as a son of a coach, I can totally appreciate how special it is to coach with your father. It's a unique experience, and Penn State on the rolls. I can't even imagine that. Talk about pressure, man. That's awesome. When you think back to your coaching career, the best kids you coached, and I'm not talking about skill wise, like what are the traits or characteristics that your favorite players that you coached all shared?
Yeah, I'll mess up the line, right? But it's something that I always think about, and it's delivered differently by different coaches. But the most important kind of ability is reliability. And when it comes down to it, your best players, your most successful players, the guys who are getting it done day in and day out, they're consistent and they're reliable. End of story. I look at, those two guys that you see right there. That's Mike Motti and Jordan Hill. In that game there, we beat the snot out of Iowa with about 55 scholarship players at Iowa on Saturday night. Those two guys there's a reason they're on my wall, because that's who they are. And I try and take that into my work every day.
100%. That's awesome. That's so cool. How do you think your Bentley players would describe you as a coach?
You know what? It probably depends on, what generation, right? Because early on, I came in there full of steam, and we had some changes that we needed to make, and there were some things that I felt I needed to put my foot down on. But one of the management lessons that I learned throughout my time there is really to get to know and to learn from your subordinates or your players. So as our program got on a more solid foundation, we were able to really learn from our kids, what fueled our kids, what they needed for support. So that changed. I was a lot more of a yeller and a screamer in years 1, 2, and 3 than I was in years 5, 6, and 7. And I think that that speaks for confidence. That speaks for somebody who has faith in their team and is prepared. That yeller and screamer in the coaching environment, that's not always the best way to be. So the same thing goes really in management, handling accounts and things like that. You handle things with a calm attitude and the willingness to solve problems and work through problems together. Don't overreact to things. I think is probably something that has helped me in my second career now.
Absolutely. The coaching background is huge. As you know, we've helped a few of your fellow coaches make the transition, and like speaking of that transition period, that's kind of when you and I first met, and
yeah.
You spent a huge part of your life playing and coaching football. I have to imagine you were just dreaming of the day that you could help businesses secure their email data, network, and apps, right?
Well, in a way, it was like it was a move that was going to be made, for personal decisions and personal choice, taking care of my family. But it's really been a rewarding role for me. And I've gotten to meet some great people. I've built some really strong relationships. It's just not, it's just not showing up, punching in the clock. I've been able to build relationships in this the same way I have with coaching friends, and that's rewarding for me.
And that personal aspect of the transition, especially for coaches, I think is underappreciated by the market, right? Like, I don't think people quite realize the dedication and effort it takes to be a coach at that level.
Yeah.
So I always laugh when we got a guy who's coached at that level, going through our program and interviewing, and they're like, well, I don't know if he's going to be overwhelmed. And I'm like, dude, he just worked like 70 hours a week for like pennies on the dollar. Trust me, he's not going to mind showing up and cold calling for 8 hours or 9 hours a day. You know what I mean?
The great deal that you always got when oh, what do you do for work? Well, I'm a football coach. Oh, cool. What do you do in the off season? Or what do what else do you do? And it's like, man, if you only knew, that what do you do in the off season question, it was always one for me. It's like, oh man, if you only knew.
Yeah, totally. Now, you talked about some of the positives. What was the hardest part of making the transition for you?
Yeah, people. You grow close with your kids as a coach, and I thought that when I was stepping away from Bentley, I was stepping away from an unbelievably talented group of kids, but the right group of kids, the kids that I wanted in the program, that are doing things academically and athletically the way you would want your own kid to do it. So it's one of those things where like a potential move comes up, and there's always that next group of kids that you don't want to let down. That next group, that next win, that next thing that you're chasing, which that really eats at you. And for me, it came to a point where I was never going to let down that team. And I needed to go and look at the team in my own house and really do what was right for them as well. And I really am glad that I was able to make that decision. I'm glad that I was able to earn the opportunities that I've been able to earn. And it has been a rewarding job. There are things about football that you miss, about that team aspect that you miss. But there's a lot of reward in helping people on another side as well, which I've been able to learn and have some fun with as well.
Yeah, and I think sales is a great place to land for all the reasons that my company exists, because sales is still a team sport, right? And there's a lot of similarities on competitiveness and the meritocracy of it all, but I'm curious to know, like, if another coach called you, other than obviously sending them to shift group, and they were looking to make a similar change, how would you advise them to approach that transition?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, is like understanding that not everybody has a great understanding of what you've been doing for the last X amount of years. So it takes a certain fit. Just like in recruiting a student athlete, it takes a certain fit to understand what the person coming into the program or the organization is all about, right? I was able to meet with a great number of former coaches that are in tech sales right now. Everybody had a different experience, but when it came down to it, it was finding the place that they felt understood them and understood what they were about, understood their experience, and really gave them the opportunity to go out and earn a good solid paycheck, earn the business. And I was lucky enough, and I met with people in the startup world. I met with people and vendors and manufacturing. I met with resellers. I was able to meet with a large, broad, group of people who all had different experiences. But when it comes down to it, this is no different. Like finding your team, finding the place that you want to be, it is about the people.
100%. That's actually the advice we give. Is it's not the product, all that stuff is secondarily to who you're going to be working for and with. That's the most important part. Just like when you pick a college, right? Like who's the coach? Who's the coach? What are the players like? That's why they do official visits. Like those are things that are critical. And I think the nugget there for those listening is you got to go and have conversations. You got to talk to as many people as you can who have been through it. And I think that's huge. Now, kind of going back to those early days of working at Barracuda, when you think about those times, What was hard for you and what really came naturally?
What was hard for me? I think the overwhelm of like acronym soup is like essentially the biggest thing for me. And you start to, in any place you're going to go through these virtual trainings and try to figure out products and solutions and, understanding a whole different, like, just it's a whole different world, a whole different way of communicating. And you walk in there, you get into your first meeting, and there are so many letters being thrown around. Don't know which way is up. For me, what I was able to do is just kind of take a step back, do my training, but was really able to like learn by just getting on the phone, having conversations, building certain opportunities and learn on the fly. And in my role, I was lucky enough to be able to say, hey, I really don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to get you in touch with the best person for the job, and I won't leave you hanging. My job is to get you answers when you need them. My job is to get you the right people when you need them. End of story. You sit on enough calls at that point, you actually begin to feel like you know what you're doing. And knowing what your role is hugely important too, right? Where it's, go back to some type of a football analogy, right? Everybody has their own position. And my position is definitely not to be the technical resource on any call or in any opportunity. My job is to make sure that certain action items are followed up on. I need to chase down the conversations, and I need to make sure that all parties, have an understanding of what we're trying to achieve.
Totally. It really is like, you call it acronym soup. It is like drinking from a fire hose. But I think one thing that's like discounted a little bit, especially on the coaching side, right? When you think about like an offensive play call in football, you've got formation, play type, offensive line protection scheme, and the cadence. And there's like, probably 1,000 different variations of that call, right? So it's like you kind of have that foundational structure of like learning new things and putting them into a system, but now everything is different. So it is hard to make that gap. What came pretty naturally to you right off the bat, you think?
Just talking with people, and being honest, right? So I had the freedom and support to be very honest with customers. Said, here's where I came from, right? And all I can tell you is that you're not going to be looking for me when you need me. End of story. And that's really how I was able to build my business in the first year at Barracuda, which was, had some great success there. My customers knew that they could count on me. My customers knew that, when there was an issue, I'd be there, and that gives me great confidence to just be able to say, hey, have you looked at X? You know that you can trust me to take care of it when it's not so good. But what I'd like to do is maybe engage you in a conversation about, maybe a different product or a different solution that we're discussing. And when customers or teammates or, whoever it may be, trust you, those conversations are a lot easier to have.
Yeah. And that I'm sure came pretty naturally to you from coaching, right? Like in terms of your approach to sales and building relationships, it comes down to honesty, I feel like, based off what you just said.
For sure. And that's the way I like to recruit. That's the way we recruited at Penn State under two phenomenal head coaches. That's the way we recruited at Bentley for my time there. Honesty. What is the expectation of your role? What will be expected of you when you get onto campus in the, football program, around the football program or academically, I think that having that honest approach to recruiting or to a sales relationship goes a heck of a long way. And if you don't start with that trust, something's going to falter in the end. It's the same thing about, well, Johnny's a really good wide receiver, so we're going to give him special treatment when he comes in here. That comes back to get you. It always does. At some point, it usually is at the biggest, most important time, which is, the same thing here in handling accounts. It's like at some point, the rubber's going to meet the road, and honesty and trust is going to be what, carries you through any issues.
100%. Now, one of the things that I always, when I talk to sales leaders that are considering hiring from us, is we talk about this idea that athletes, coaches, and veterans, they come from a very structured environment, right? And you know this from your coaching days. Like, I've seen the manual at the beginning of the season for Holy Cross football, and they know exactly where they're going to be in August on October 15th on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
And we find that if you can bring that over to your sales career, it pays dividends. So I would love to dig in a little bit about the operating rhythm that you've developed as a sales professional. How do you think about structuring a day and a week as an account executive?
Well, I think one of the things that's actually hardest for players in a transition like that is if you look at that example that you just gave, is they're being told where they're going to be. So someone else is responsible for that level of organization and that level of clarity. And for you to be able to, what we try to do as coaches is make it so Johnny wakes up in the morning and he knows what he needs to do. He knows how to do it. And we try to make that as easy and simple as we possibly can for that team to be successful, right? But now when I go into sales, as much as you have support in different areas in the, organization, when it comes down to it, you're your own team, right? And, for us at Barracuda, we were doing our own prospecting. We were, running our own calls, closing it, and servicing those accounts straight across the board. So that's building a team from the ground up, and needing to make sure that you're doing what's right. So now we get into the scheduling aspect of things. It's different for everyone, but finding quiet time is probably the hardest, and I don't think that that's done within the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That's where elite salespeople, elite anyone is going to get this done outside of the normal business hours, because I need to sit in front of my desk, whether it be 4 or 5 in the morning or midnight, depending on, how my things are going. I need to be able to sit in front of my computer and make sure that I've handled what needs to be handled, right? I kind of, group things into, that prospecting, active accounts, right? And then what I'm trying to work on. But I want to go to bed every night knowing that the next morning when I wake up, I've taken care of everything from the day before. And everybody has woken up in that morning, maybe not knowing your schedule that clearly, not knowing what you have for a call, or, if you're lifting legs or upper body or something like that. It's like when you don't have that awareness of your day, you struggle. One token that I found works really well for me is I'm going to work late nights and early mornings. That's just kind of who I am. But I found that when I get that work done at night, I send all my emails for 7:55 a.m. Essentially, whether that's internal or external, I want the first thing somebody sees is that I'm on top of their account, or I'm on top of this issue for them. I don't want to, take time out of somebody's day that might be with their family. So when I go to work at my own time, I send those emails for 7:55. There's a lot of people internally in my time at Barracuda that might get 6, 7, 8 emails from me at 7:55 a.m. But they know that I'm on top of certain projects, and then they can take their time and follow up the way they need to. So it's extra work. Extra work's going to get you where you want to be, and there's no secret to that.
No, there's no silver bullet, man. It's hard hat and lunch pail for sure.
Yeah.
Can you share like one or two like hard earned sales lessons that you've learned that you rely on most days? Like my example is always one of my first sales meetings ever. Customer asked me a question. Instead of doing the right thing and like telling him I had no idea what he was talking about, I faked it. And I thought the meeting went great. And my boss after the meeting was like, that guy's never going to call us again because you clearly bullshitted him, JR. And now, like, anytime someone says something and I'm like, I don't understand, I will say, I don't understand what you're saying, or I don't know the answer, but I will go find it. What's something like that for you that you call on every day?
It's just funny that you say it that way. It's like, man, I'm able to use my lack of knowledge to my advantage all the time. I always say, yes, I'm going to tell you we can do this, JR, but I really don't know. And I'm going to lean on, certain resources to make sure that they hold me accountable. Right. But I think the first thing that I learned was, focusing on small goals, right? So when I got to Barracuda, it was even in the first meeting I had with the hiring manager, AJ Grant at the time, and he said, it's a numbers game. Like, you need to create 3 to 5 opportunities a week. And if you create 3 to 5 opportunities a week, you will have success. So for the first 6 months I was at Barracuda, that was the only thing I focused on. I relate this to like, hey, I want to bench press 400 pounds. I want to squat 500 pounds. Well, that's fantastic, but that takes, X amount of work, X amount of reps in order to get there. Right. So, I looked at this as, I'm going to treat this as I talk to, my football team going into the off season or the preseason. And it's one step at a time, right? So I had one goal in mind, and that was to have enough conversations to where I can create the opportunities that I was told by my coach lead to success. So, early on, all I did was try to take care of the active accounts at Barracuda. Tried to make sure that I had conversations with each and every one of them, and opportunities kind of came of it. So when they asked me what my one goal was, it was to talk to all 90 of my customers. That was it. I just wanted to speak to them, and I felt like I would learn in the process and obviously get some opportunities out of it as well. So it was kind of funny there, and just going back to that point, right, where I was just grinding on opportunities and not really thinking about anything else. Come to find out at the end of like 6 months, and I didn't even know a lot of the metrics that reps were being evaluated on. And they're like, you've created twice as many opportunities as anybody else in the company. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just grinding. I need to have the conversations. If my calendar, if my calendar's not full, then I don't feel like I'm doing my job. I was told, get out there and talk to people. So that was funny. It was like 6 months to the day where they threw out this opportunities created dashboard, and I was like, man, I guess I am doing something. And 6 months later, it all came around, and the 12th month on the job where business closed, and it was a successful year, but it came from the daily grind, right? Not missing a lift.
Yeah. Yep. And shout out to AJ Grant. He's shaped a lot of young men and women into sales professionals. And question for you, Coach, do you miss coaching at all?
I do. I miss the kids. I miss practice. I miss games. There are plenty of things that I don't miss as well. And, I certainly, when it's convenient, I get that itch big time. Like Labor Day weekend, it's football season again. It's like I want to be out there. But quite honestly, in my new life, my new career, like I know what type of commitment that takes to be successful. And that's why when somebody does ask me, it's like, are you going to go back? I feel like I found really good balance in what I'm doing now. And there's a competitive aspect to it. A lot of the chase, probably affects your family a little bit more positively, in this role. So there's plenty that I miss. Most importantly, it's the people. Obviously chasing victories is really fun too. But quick side note, was able to take my wife and my parents last night to the Eagles concert at the Garden, which was just something that in 20 years of coaching, I never had a minute to do anything like that. And we had an unbelievable time. We just, really had fun building, different memories. And I think that those are the types of things that I wanted to do when I was able to make this change. So grateful for opportunities like that,
Totally. And listen, there's still like you said, right? You're chasing wins. They're just different. The scoreboard's different, but there's still a scoreboard and there's still that adrenaline rush when you bring one across the goal line. You know what I mean?
There really is.
Totally. All right. These are our last two closing questions, and we ask every guest these. So if we asked you to highlight one of your skills that's made you elite so far as a sales person, what would it be?
Yeah. When I think about that, immediately what comes up is communication. And I don't think that any organization can be successful without great communication. I don't think any leader can be successful without, a great ability and willingness to communicate. So, whether it be my manager and managing up and explaining what maybe I need for support, or clearly laying out, an opportunity or a potential relationship that I'm trying to work on, whether it be internally or externally, communication is going to help absolutely, every relationship that you have. And the relationships are in my mind, what produces.
Totally. And relationships are built off communication. That's a phenomenal, like elite communication is critical. Now you'll appreciate this. As a son of a hockey coach, my dad hammered into our heads this idea of professionalism. He used to say when we were little, there's a lot of people that play hockey, but there's not a lot of hockey players, right? And it was about like living and breathing the sport and like really taking it seriously and showing up every day as a pro, even as an 8-year-old, which is crazy, but it led to great outcomes for us. And now, like when I talk about salespeople, there's certain people that I'm like, that person is a pro, right? And we think that's the highest praise that you can give a salesperson. So what does being a pro in sales, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind there, JR, is being able to navigate the bumps in the road, being able to navigate the ups and downs of your day, your career, any certain situation, right? For us to think that everything is going to be perfect throughout each and every day is absolutely insane. So when things are really low, when things are bad, how do you handle it? How do you react? How do you behave? All right. And then, how do you grow from that certain, circumstance? So, I think about, I'll go back to those two guys right there. Those two guys and their teammates in the 2012 Penn State football team that was hit with the most severe sanctions ever to be dropped on an NCAA football program. those guys right there knew how to persevere through some difficult times, and they did it with class. You look at that, just even inter-office gossip of like, oh man, they changed this on us, and now I'm pissed. Well, you know what? You got to get over that real fast and get on to the next thing and go do your job. So navigating the tough times is what I think makes a professional salesperson.
100%. Bill, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation, man. So many great nuggets for our candidates and for those that come across our podcast to kind of listen to what we do. So thank you so much for giving us the time, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, JR, thanks a lot. I mean, I can't speak highly enough for what you're doing. I reached out to you when I was thinking about a move. I know that the training that you provide is unbelievable to set someone up for success. And I'm spreading the word because I think that there are so many great people who, with given the opportunity, can be really successful. And luckily, you're bringing in people that generally have, at least some experience in perseverance. I don't think that can be overlooked in any job.
100%. Thank you very much. This wraps up this episode of Merchants of Change. If you enjoyed this episode, the most meaningful way to say thanks is to submit a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in working with us, please come find us at www.shiftgroup.io.